The day had started with sunlight and laughter. I remember the smell of vanilla, frosting clinging to my fingers after tasting the final batch of wedding cake samples. The baker promised the 3-tier masterpiece would be ready in exactly 2 weeks for the day I'd been dreaming of since Ethan slipped that ring onto my finger. Everything felt perfect. The invitations had been mailed, the dress hung on my closet door like a whisper of silk and hope, and my mother had been fussing over every flower detail with her usual precision. Even my father, usually quiet, had hugged me that morning and said, "You'll make a beautiful bride, Maya." I should have felt at peace, but there was a strange unease curling in my stomach as I drove home. The clouds were gathering faster than they should have. The sky darkened in an instant, and rain began to fall, tapping softly against the windshield like hesitant fingers. I remember checking my phone for Ethan's text. He'd promised to meet me for dinner, but before I could read it, a blinding light cut across the road. A horn blared, tires screeched, then nothing. When I opened my eyes again, I was lying under white hospital lights. The world smelled of antiseptic and something metallic. Pain throbbed through my leg, heavy and dull. A machine beeped steadily beside me. My mother was there, sitting stiffly on the chair, her lips pressed into a thin line. "Mom," my voice cracked. "What happened?" "You were in an accident," she said softly. "A truck hit you near the intersection. You're lucky, Maya. You're going to be fine." I blinked slowly, the fog in my mind lifting by degrees. The wedding gets in 2 weeks. My father, who had been standing near the window, turned away. My mother forced a small smile. "Don't worry about that now. Just focus on getting better, sweetheart. The rest can wait." Something in her tone made me uneasy, but I was too weak to argue. Days passed in a blur of painkillers, visitors, and restless sleep. My leg was in a cast, and the doctors said I'd need weeks of recovery. Ethan never came to see me, not once. Each morning, I'd wake expecting to see his face, his warm brown eyes filled with concern. But it was always my mother's cool gaze instead. "He's busy," she said one afternoon when I asked. "There's a lot going on." "Busy," I whispered. "We're getting married." She looked away, pretending to smooth the blanket across my lap. My father muttered something about resting, and they both left before I could ask anything else. The silence in that room was unbearable. I kept picturing Ethan's smile, the way he'd looked at me during our engagement party, the promises we'd made under fairy lights. I told myself he was just nervous, overwhelmed, anything but indifferent. But deep down, a tiny voice whispered that something wasn't right. My parents' unease, Ethan's absence, the way the nurses looked at me with pity. It all felt like pieces of a puzzle I didn't yet understand. I closed my eyes and tried to convince myself everything would be okay. The wedding could wait, love could wait. I had no idea then that while I lay in that sterile hospital bed, my life, the one I'd built so carefully, was already being stolen from me. Days turned into weeks, and my recovery crawled forward. Like a stubborn shadow, I learned to hobble on crutches, to fake smiles for the nurses, and to ignore the ache in my heart that had nothing to do with my injuries. My parents visited daily, bringing flowers and polite smiles, but never once did they mention the wedding. The silence around it grew louder than the hospital's beeping machines. One afternoon I asked again, "Did Ethan call?" My mother looked startled, as if I'd spoken something forbidden. "Oh, he's been busy, sweetheart. He sends his love." "Busy doing what? We were supposed to be planning our honeymoon." She only sighed, avoiding my eyes. "You really shouldn't stress yourself. Rest, Maya. Rest." That was all anyone told me to do. So I rested. Through endless hours of confusion and the hollow ache of abandonment. It was a nurse's conversation that broke the illusion. I was half dozing when 2 of them entered my room, chatting softly as they refilled my water. "Did you see the photos from that vineyard wedding?" One said, her tone giddy. "The bride's dress was breathtaking." "Oh yes," the other replied. "Poor thing, though. Can you imagine marrying your sister's fiancé? That must have been awkward." My chest tightened. My heart began to race. "Sister's fiancé?" I croaked, my voice hoarse. They both froze, realizing I was awake. One quickly mumbled an apology and left, but the words were already echoing in my skull. My trembling hands reached for my phone. The replacement my father had finally given me 2 days earlier. Notifications flooded the screen, missed calls, unread messages, and dozens of social media posts. I opened one. My breath caught in my throat. There it was. My dream wedding venue, the same flowers I'd chosen, the same archway draped in soft ivory silk. The same date printed on the invitations that bore my name. But standing beneath that arch wasn't me. It was Emma, my younger sister, and beside her, holding her hand with the same tender expression he'd once reserved for me, was Ethan. The caption under my mother's smiling photo read, "Life writes its own stories. Congratulations to our children, Emma and Ethan. Wishing them a lifetime of love." My vision blurred. The phone slipped from my hands, clattering against the floor. The nurse rushed in, but I barely heard her. My lungs refused to work. Every word, every memory, every promise Ethan had made, all of it disintegrated like smoke. When I was discharged the following week, I went straight home. The house was filled with the faint scent of roses leftovers from their wedding, no doubt. My mother was arranging photos into a new album, her expression unreadable. "Why?" I demanded. My voice shook, but the anger underneath it burned bright. "Why would you do this to me?" She didn't flinch. "Maya, please try to understand. Ethan couldn't wait forever. You were in the hospital, uncertain about your recovery. He and Emma grew close." "Grew close," I repeated, choking on the words, while I was lying in a hospital bed. Emma appeared at the doorway, guilt painted across her face. The diamond ring sparkled mockingly on her finger. "My ring, Maya," she whispered. "I didn't mean for it to happen, but we love each other now." For a moment, the world tilted and went still. I looked at my family, the people I had trusted most, and realized I was utterly alone. That night, I packed my bags and walked out without saying goodbye. The house, the memories, the life I had built, all of it stayed behind, buried under betrayal. The first night away from home, I cried until my chest ached. I rented a small apartment 3 hours away, where no one knew my name or my story. The walls were bare, the air smelled faintly of dust and paint, but the silence felt like freedom. For the first time in months, I could breathe. At first, life was mechanical. Wake up, breathe, work. Sleep, repeat. I poured every ounce of pain into my art, sketching, painting, and redesigning spaces. I had always loved interior design, but now it became my salvation. Every color palette was a new beginning. Every blueprint was a way to rebuild what had been destroyed inside me. Eventually, I landed a small job redesigning a local cafe. The owner loved my work, and soon word spread. My designs were bold, emotional, filled with warmth, the very things I'd once longed for in my family. Within a year, I was working on bigger projects. By the second year, I opened my own firm, Luma Designs. Success didn't erase the pain, but it gave it meaning. I told myself that every betrayal had pushed me toward independence. I refused to check on Emma or Ethan, though sometimes curiosity whispered at the back of my mind. What were they doing? Were they happy? Did they ever regret it? The answers came sooner than expected. One morning, I met a former mutual friend, Julia, at a design expo. Her expression softened when she saw me. "Maya, you look amazing. I wasn't sure I should even say this, but Emma and Ethan aren't doing well." I said nothing, though my heart thudded quietly. She went on, "They fight constantly. Ethan's business failed, and your parents keep bailing them out. Emma blames him for everything. It's bad." I nodded once, polite, detached. Inside, though, there was a flicker, not of joy, but of grim understanding. The world had a way of balancing itself, even without my help. A few months later, fate offered me a strange gift. A luxury resort reached out, requesting a complete redesign for its grand reopening. The name of the resort nearly stopped my heart. It was Silverleaf Vineyard, the same place where my wedding was supposed to take place. For a long moment, I simply stared at the email. I could almost smell the lavender fields, hear the soft music that was meant to play during my first dance. The memories were sharp, but no longer unbearable. I accepted the job. Returning to Silverleaf felt surreal. The vineyard looked smaller now, its once glamorous decor faded and tired. I walked the same stone path I was supposed to walk as a bride, but this time I did it as a woman who owned her power. Over the next few months, I transformed the place. I replaced the old chandeliers with glass ones that scattered light like hope. I filled the halls with gentle colors, soft golds, and cream whites. Every design decision was a reclamation, a quiet act of healing. And when the project neared completion, the owner told me the resort planned a gala to celebrate the reopening, and I would be the guest of honor. I smiled. The irony was beautiful. Without realizing it, I was standing exactly where my story had fallen apart, only this time I was the one writing the ending. The night of the Silverleaf Gala glowed like a dream I hadn't dared to imagine. The vineyard sparkled beneath a canopy of lights, music drifting through the air as guests in elegant attire toasted to new beginnings. It wasn't lost on me that this was the very place my world had ended years ago, but tonight it was mine. Every detail, every shimmering glass, every flickering candle bore my name, Maya Hart, the designer who had resurrected Silverleaf from ruin. As I walked through the crowd, people congratulated me on the transformation. Cameras flashed, my name echoed in admiration. But beneath the laughter and polite chatter, my heart pounded with something deeper anticipation. Because they were coming. My assistant had handled the guest list, as always, sending invitations to everyone of social relevance in the area, including my parents, Ethan, and Emma. I hadn't expected them to decline. They never turned down free luxury, especially when there were cameras around. And right on cue, they appeared. Emma entered first, draped in a glittering gown that couldn't quite hide the tiredness in her eyes. Ethan followed, older, thinner, his one-seasy charm dulled. My mother walked behind them, her smile practiced and brittle. My father looked uncomfortable, tugging at his tie. When they spotted me across the room, the shock on their faces was almost theatrical. Emma froze, Ethan paled. My mother recovered first, stepping forward with an uncertain smile. Maya, she breathed, we didn't know you'd be here. I would hope not. I said calmly, my voice steady, considering I'm the host. Her smile faltered. You're the host, the designer. I corrected, tilting my head. And as of last month, the owner of Silverleaf, the color drained from her face. Around us, conversations quieted as curious guests turned their attention. Emma clutched Ethan's arm, whispering something frantic. But it was too late, the truth had already begun to unravel in the open air. Later that night, I stood on the stage for my speech. The lights dimmed, casting a soft glow across the room. I could feel every gaze fixed on me, including theirs 2 years ago. I began, this place was supposed to host a wedding that never happened. Life took a cruel turn, and I lost more than I thought I could survive. But pain has a way of shaping us into something stronger. My voice didn't waver. Tonight, I stand here as proof that betrayal doesn't have to break you. It can build you. This vineyard, once a symbol of my loss, now stands as my triumph. Murmurs rippled through the audience. Emma's mascara streaked eyes glistened. Ethan stared at the floor. My mother's composure cracked, her lips trembling, but I didn't look at them again. I smiled instead, lifting my glass. To healing, I said, and to endings that make way for beginnings. Applause filled the hall, thunderous and sincere. When the night ended, I stepped out onto the terrace, where the stars shimmered over the quiet vines. I felt a soft breeze against my skin, cool and forgiving. Emma found me there, tears streaking her face. I'm sorry, she whispered. You have everything now, you won. I looked at her gently. No, Emma, I didn't need to win. I just needed to let go. And I did. As I walked away from the vineyard that night, the past finally loosened its grip. The ghosts that once haunted me faded into the starlight, leaving behind only peace. I was no longer the woman whose wedding was stolen. I was the woman who built something far greater from the ashes.